There are 16 champion legends we can currently build our decks around in Riftbound, but which should you be playing and which fits your playstyle best? Today I'll be covering all of the champion legends, their signature cards, and their associated champion units so that you can have a better idea of what to look into playing. To make this a bit easier, I will also be grouping them into 6 groups, which you can click ahead to see if you're interested in them. These are Spell Slingers, Aggro, Movement, Holding, Buffs, and Specialists. So let's not waste any time and jump right into our Spell Slingers. There are 3 champion legends which currently fall into this category, and we might as well start with the most popular, and arguably the strongest of the legends, Kai'Sa, Daughter of the Void. This is in the Fury and Mind domain. She has the reaction ability to exhaust herself and add a power to pay for your spells. This means that once per turn you can cheat out a card that should be setting you behind by forcing you to recycle one of your runes. Really powerful cards like Void Seeker, Shakedown, and Smokescreen can suddenly cost no power, which is just fantastic. It is essentially having one of the seal gears in your legend zone. This makes for some really effective ways of developing small advantages every turn, which build up throughout the game and eventually will allow you to overwhelm your opponent. Her signature spell is Icathian Rain, a 7 energy spell that also costs 3 runes. This spell deals 2 damage to any unit, and you can do that 6 times. It's pretty expensive, but it's really great at either nuking 1 or 2 big units or clearing out literally everything token players like Viktor have been working towards the entire game. Notably, while this is expensive, because Kai'Sa helps you avoid recycling your runes all game long, it's actually much more affordable than it would be with just about any other legend if they were able to play it. With that though, let's take a look at Kai'Sa's associated champion cards. Firstly, we have Kai'Sa Survivor, a Fury card with 4 might for 4 energy, which can be accelerated, and who lets you draw a card whenever she conquers. This is a solid resource generation engine, and she's able to act immediately, which just makes her a really well-rounded unit overall, and it's why we see her in so many other decks outside of Kai'Sa as well. Her counterpart, Kai'Sa Evolutionary, is a much bigger card. This card has 6 might and comes in for 6 energy and a blue power. Like Red Kai'Sa, she also has a conquering ability, but this time she allows you to play a spell from your trash that costs less than the amount of points you have in the game, and then you can play that spell without paying its energy cost before recycling it. That could be pretty insane. And not only that, but Blue Kai'Sa also has ganking, meaning she can proc her Conquer ability much more easily and much more often than Red Kai'Sa can. Again though, she is inherently a bit slower to get onto the board. In general, I think that's really what holds Blue Kai'Sa back, as most lists don't seem to run her at all. However, I think she could definitely show some potential in the future as we get more cards and possible targets for her to bring back from the trash. Speaking of lists, if you want me to go over more deck lists like Kai'Sa or for any other legend, let me know in the comments down below, and if there's enough interest, I'll definitely get on that. Also, if you're enjoying this and want to be notified when those videos go live, do me a favor and leave a like and subscribe for more. It really does make a massive difference for the channel, and it'll keep you informed. Anyways, on to Annie. Annie, Darkchild, is our second Spellslinger legend, and thematically she's actually pretty similar to Kai'Sa, with 2 main differences. Firstly, and most importantly, she is obviously in the Fury and Chaos domains rather than Fury and Mind. And this is interesting, as while both blue and purple spells tend to be about control, they do it in very different ways, with Chaos spells often bouncing cards back to hand, while blue spells will weaken or move their targets. But I'll get into that more specifically when I talk about domains later this week. The second way that Annie differs is obviously in her ability. Annie allows you to ready up to 2 runes at the end of your turn. Notably, this card did receive an errata to say up to 2, so if you don't have 2, it isn't like there's a minimum requirement. That said, up to 2 also means that you can now forget to ready those if you're not paying attention, so you do need to be careful to ensure that you're getting the value from this legend. Again, I have a video on all of the erratas that you need to know about as well, and you can check that out after this one. Regardless, this essentially allows Annie to go all out on her own turn and then have enough energy to play 1 decent reaction on her opponent's turn at a bare minimum. You could also save up more energy if you want to be more disruptive, obviously, but that's all up to you and it's all situational. Like I said, it is very similar to Kai'Sa as it allows you to generate more value. However, the difference between saving energy or power lets these decks be built in pretty meaningfully different ways. Annie's signature card, of course, is Tibbers. This is a super expensive card coming in for 8 energy and 2 power. It has 7 might, which is nice as it's just big enough to survive a ton of the damaging spells in the game right now. But more importantly, when Tibbers is played, it deals 3 damage to all units at battlefields. This is a huge board wipe, which is great, though notably it does affect your own units as well. So just be careful with that. Luckily, we are more focused on spells in this deck than units, so it shouldn't be too terrible of a problem for you to overcome. You can also, of course, recall your units back to the base to get around this. Kind of funny that both signature cards so far have kind of shit on Viktor specifically, but I promise signature cards going forward do have some variety. Now, we also have Annie's 2 champion cards. Firstly, the Chaos version, Annie Stubborn, is a 3 might unit for 4 energy and a power that lets you return a spell from your trash to your hand when you play her. Purple has a ton of high value spells to take back, and red has a lot of removal and damage, so that's pretty awesome actually. Meanwhile, the Fury version, Annie Fiery, is a 4 might unit for 5 energy and a power that increases the damage of your spells and abilities by 1. And notably, this is for each instance of damage. So looking back at cards like Icathian Rain, for example, from Kaisa, this would deal 3 damage 6 times instead of 2. So the more often that an effect goes off, the bigger the benefit that this card will give. That said, the only cards in red and purple that can double dip on this effect so far are Icathian Rain and Falling Star, so that is a bit disappointing. But again, as more cards come out, this could be better later on. All in all, Annie is just another solid resource-based legend that people really seem to be enjoying playing, and you should definitely try her out. And that brings us to our final Spellslinger legend, Lux, Lady of Luminosity, this time in the Mind and Order domains. Her ability says that when you play a spell that costs 5 or more, you can draw 1. The nice part is that this isn't limited to once per turn, but the bad part is that it sets a minimum requirement of paying 5 for a card. So you can't do it on turn 1, you can only do it on turn 2 if you are getting the extra starting rune at the beginning of the game, and if you're going first, she does nothing until turn 3, assuming you haven't recycled your runes at all to this point. That said, there are plenty of expensive blue and yellow spells to work with. Blast of Power, Grand Stratagem, Singularity, Divine Judgment, and Time Warp, for example. So there is some potential there, and as the card pool grows, she will have a chance to grow with it. Her signature spell, Final Spark, also fits into this category. This is an 8 energy action spell that deals 8 damage to a unit. And honestly, that feels a bit weak, especially for 8 energy, though of course it doesn't cost any power. But also you can consider that for 6 energy and some power, you can either kill something outright at a battlefield with Blast of Power, or deal 6 damage to 2 units with Singularity. I don't know, not super impressed with Final Spark. But let's talk about her champion units. Lux Crown Guard is a 2 might order unit for 4 energy. It is super understated, but she makes up for that by being able to exhaust herself to give you 2 energy for spells at reaction speed. She is basically a mana dork, and she makes the Legend's ability much more manageable to play with. As for the blue version, Lux Illuminated is a 5 might unit for 6 energy and a power that gets 3 might for the turn whenever you cast a spell that costs 5 or more energy. So, one Lux benefits your champion legend, while the other just benefits from their theme. In my opinion, Crown Guard is miles better, but that said, a 3 might boost is nothing to laugh at, and maybe you could build some sort of Defend the Castle deck around her. Now, after our Spellslingers, we have our aggro-based legends, essentially decks which will flood the cards from their hand onto the table as fast as possible in hopes of overwhelming the opponent. And we're going to be starting this section off with Jinx Loose Cannon. Okay. This is probably one of the most flexible legends in the game. Jinx is in the Fury and Chaos domains, just like Annie, and lets you draw 1 card in the beginning phase if your hand has 1 or fewer cards in it. Notably, this will happen before the normal draw step. But what makes Jinx so open-ended is that all this really wants to do is empty your hand, and you can do that however you want. Slinging spells, playing low to the ground energy curve with a lot of small units, or just by discarding things. All of which these colors really excel at, and it lets Jinx feel really good to play most of the time. She also has one of the most consistent and annoying signature spells in the game, the Super Mega Death Rocket. This deals 5 damage to any unit, they don't even need to be at a battlefield. And whenever you conquer, you can discard a card to return the spell from your trash to your hand. Essentially, you can blast something for 5 damage every turn in the best case scenario, which can be very hard for the enemy to come back from. Couple in a few cards that want to be discarded, like Flame Chompers, and you have an all-around solid card that makes it difficult for your opponent to ever catch up. As for our champion units, in red we have Jinx Demolitionist, a 4-might unit for 3 energy and a power that can be accelerated to come in ready. She also has Assault 2, which gives her a solid boost when she attacks, and hopefully lets you conquer so that you can get your Super Mega Death Rocket back. On top of all of that, when she is played, you need to discard 2. This is a bit of a steep cost, but remember she is both slightly overstatted, and this deck wants you to discard in most cases, so it should be okay, but even so, this is something you need to be smart with. Now, something I do want to bring up here is that in Riftbound, you will pay as much of a cost as possible. So when Jinx says that when you play her, you discard 2, if you only have 1 card in your hand or no cards, you will discard whatever you have and then continue as normal. It's not like you can't play her if you can't discard 2 in this case. The Chaos variant of Jinx is Jinx Rebel, a 5-might unit for 5 and a power that will ready herself and gets a 1-might boost whenever you discard a card. Similar to Lux, one of these cards enables the legend and the other leans into the theme. Both are pretty okay in this case though, and you should be fine whichever you go with. Continuing with the aggro theme, we have Darius, Hand of Noxus. This legend is in Fury and Order, and has a reaction ability to exhaust himself to add 1 energy. However, this is also a Legion ability, meaning you will need to play another card earlier in the turn to activate this effect. This one is, pretty okay. It wants you to play multiple cards per turn, but you'll definitely need to have a solid draw engine to be able to keep that up, because unlike Jinx, once you're out of cards, he's kind of done. That said, this is a super fun deck, and I recommend you check it out if you like aggro beatdown styles, especially because red and yellow work so well with battle tricks, recruits, assault, accelerate, and removal spells. What isn't great is Darius' signature spell, the Noxian Guillotine, which has a 4 energy and 1 fury cost, and at action speed will let you target a unit and say that the next time that it takes damage, it will be killed. However, if you have Legion active, you can kill it immediately. Flavor-wise, this is kinda cool. It feels like putting a bleed stack on something and then ulting in League, right? But conditional removal like this always kind of rubs me the wrong way in general. I can definitely see the use cases. Maybe your opponent tries to conquer a battlefield you're holding, and then you drop this, and suddenly your Poro takes out their Volibear. But even so, I'm just not a big fan of this card. In Fury, we also have Darius Trifarian, a 5-might unit for 5 energy and a power that gets 2 might and readies himself whenever you play your second card in a turn. Notably, this is only the second card and does not happen every time you play 2 cards. Even so, decently strong. As for the Order variant, Darius Executioner has 6 might and comes in for 6 energy and a rune. They give all friendly units at their location 1 might, and if you have Legion active, it comes in readied. Also, not a bad option, but the red one is probably easier to work with. And well, we covered Darius, we might as well do Garen next. Garen, Might of Demacia, is in Body and Order, which are very combat-heavy colors, and has the ability to draw 2 cards when you conquer if you have 4 or more units at that battlefield. This is absolutely booty cheeks, and it's my pick for the worst legend in the game right now. Sure, draw 2 is pretty cool, but you need 4 units at a battlefield? So best case scenario, probably turn 3 if nothing is removed yet? On top of that, you have to be conquering with it. Which yeah, ideally that can happen once per turn, but it just isn't always possible, right? And so, in many games, he might just do nothing. This is the single most win more legend, but offers you nothing to set you in a winning position. But maybe his signature card will help, right? This is Decisive Strike. It is an action speed spell for 5 energy and a power that gives all friendly units 2 might this turn. Honestly, not a terrible effect. And clearly, Garen wants you to be spamming out units, so the buff should be pretty considerable, but again, it's just very win more. And if you aren't ahead, this doesn't do much. You can compare it to Viktor's signature spell, Siphon Power, which chooses a battlefield and then lowers enemy units there by 1 might and boosts your own by 1 might. So effectively, again, a 2 might swing. But that one is a reaction speed spell and costs less than half as much. And sure, it is battlefield specific, but it is way more versatile and faster. As for his champion cards, in order we have Garen Commander, a 5 might unit for 6 and a power that gives other friendly units their 1 might. And like, that sounds familiar, right? Well, that's because we just covered Darius, who has effectively the same card in the same color, but which also has 1 more might and can come in readied if you have Legion active. I do like Darius and Garen kind of having mirrored cards. I don't like that Garen's is just worse for no reason. The orange version, Garen Rugged, has the same stats as the yellow one, but also has both Assault and Shield too. This one I do like quite a bit more. It doesn't really fit with the Garen Legend, but I think as an individual unit it's pretty okay, if not a bit on the expensive side. All in all, this is probably easily the worst Legend in the game, and it just feels bad all around, which is upsetting because I play way too much Garen in League, and I still enjoy using Garen every chance I can in the Path of Champions on Legend of Runeterra. I really wanted to like this one, so it's just kind of a shame. Enough negativity though, let's get into some fun cards that focus on movement, effectively overwhelming the opponent with more showdowns and combats than they can deal with. Starting with Misfortune Bounty Hunter. This legend is in Body and Chaos, and she can be exhausted to give a unit ganking this turn. I think this is such a strong ability and gives you an absolute boatload, no pun intended, of mobility and versatility on the board. Couple it with a couple move spells, and you can easily score bonus points all over the place. But you can't exactly move your units to a battlefield full of enemies, which is where Misfortune's signature spell comes in. Bullet Time costs 1 energy, and at action speed allows you to pay any number of power you want to deal that much damage to all enemies at a battlefield. This is a crazy strong AoE removal spell that has built-in flexibility and versatility. However, it sets you pretty far behind in mana economy once you actually use it. That said, if you're planning on this being the last turn anyways, that doesn't matter. So, spend 12 runes, blow that shit up. Overall, I do think this is a pretty great card though. The Chaos version of the Misfortune card is Misfortune Buccaneer, a 4 might unit for 4 energy and a power that can be played on an open battlefield and allows your friendly units to be played at open battlefields as well. This is a super cool card. It is very aggressive and opens a ton of opportunities with the Legend card. The body variant of Misfortune is Misfortune Captain, a 5 might unit for 5 and a power that can accelerate and has ganking. On top of that, the first time that she moves each turn, you can ready another exhausted unit you have. Again, huge synergy with the Legend. Both of these cards are really great and fit perfectly into what Misfortune wants to do, so I'm definitely excited to play around with this deck. It looks extremely fun. A pretty similar champion legend is Yasuo Unforgiven, though this time it is in Calm and Chaos. Man, we really got this far into the video without mentioning Calm at all. That's crazy. Yasuo also has an activated ability. This time you need to pay 2 energy, and when you exhaust him, you can move a unit to or from your base. So while Misfortune allowed your units to move between battlefields, Yasuo effectively allows your units to get an extra standard move, and kinda gives them pseudo accelerate as well. Again, there's a ton of utility here, and you can do some really cool stuff with him. His signature spell, Last Breath, costs 3 energy and 2 power, and it is an action speed spell that readies a friendly unit and then deals damage equal to that unit's might to an enemy at a battlefield. Again, super solid in terms of giving you mobility, and it has built-in removal on top of that. Yasuo's first champion is in Calm. It is Yasuo Remorseful, a 6 might unit for 6 energy and 2 power that deals damage equal to its might to an enemy unit at the location that he attacks in. It is a really strong attacking unit, especially when combined with the Legend. I will say, it is pretty expensive though. The Chaos version, Yasuo Windrider, is a bit cheaper, being 5 energy and 1 power for a 4 might unit. This version has ganking, and the third time that he moves in a turn, he will score you a point. Having a champion with an alternate win con is always kinda nice, and the deck definitely offers enough ways to move him around to guarantee that he can go off. I mean, standard move plus legend ability is already 2, so any other move skill will get you there. All in all, I think this is another really cool deck. It's definitely more of a controlling style deck than Misfortune, but it's still super fun to play with. Now, on the other end of things are decks that are trying to not move and hold a battlefield as long as possible to win that way. And again, we have 3 legends that are really trying to facilitate that, firstly being Ahri. Ahri, Nine-Tailed Fox, is in the Calm and Mind domain and has a passive ability that says when an enemy unit attacks a battlefield you control, give it -1 might this turn to a minimum of 1. So while many other decks are trying to boost their own units, Ahri is instead trying to drain your opponent's power to make attacking you feel insurmountable. In general, this works best against decks that use many small units to attack, like Viktor or Garen might do, as the effect will proc for each of those cards and feels multiplicative. And we can see this theme continue in her signature spell, Foxfire. Normally this costs 3 energy, but it can be played as a hidden card instead for just 1 power. Foxfire kills any number of units at a battlefield, with might totaling up to 4 or less. So in combination with the legend passive, if an enemy was to attack you with 4 2-might units, they would shrink and then you'd be able to kill all 4 of them, and that's kinda gross feeling. I like it a lot. Notably, with the recent rules changes to hidden cards, Foxfire will only be able to target units at the battlefield that it is located at, but still, solid removal card overall when it comes to dealing with small attackers. Now in line with that holding theme is our Calm Ahri, Ahri Alluring. This unit has 4 might and costs 5 energy and a power, and when she holds, you will score a point. Considering the deck is all about holding, that's not too bad overall. Her mind counterpart is Ahri Inquisitive, a 3 might unit for 3 energy and a power that gives an enemy unit at a battlefield -2 might to a minimum of 1 whenever she attacks or defends there. This is a more proactive version of that alluring card, but I definitely see a lot of value in each version. Another holding legend alongside Ahri is the second most popular deck in the game, Master Yi. Master Yi Wuju Bladesman is a calm and body champion that gives your units 2 might when they defend alone. Another passive ability like Ahri, though a bit more conditional. This card is deceptively strong though, largely due to the colors that it is in. There is so much versatility and protection and so many combat tricks in green and orange that it just makes Yi feel like a menace to deal with. On top of that, because of the wide range of possibilities, Yi can be built in several different ways, and we've seen 3 different versions placed pretty well in tournament results. His signature spell is Highlander. It costs 4 energy, and at reaction speed, you can choose a friendly unit, then the next time that card dies this turn, it is instead recalled to the base exhausted. Notably, this is another card that got an errata, as the card that is recalled also gets healed now. This term wasn't in the game when the set was printed, but it ensures that the unit doesn't simply die from still being marked for damage when it is recalled. Like I said though, these colors make it really hard to deal with Yi players holding a space in general, and with an ability to keep their units alive like this, it's just made even more difficult. Yi's champion units, on the other hand, are not exactly top tier, despite their legend card being so. The calm version is Master Yi Meditative, a 4 might unit for 5 energy and a power that gets 4 might if you have 8 or more runes. This makes him pretty large late in the game, which is nice, but until then he is just severely understated. It also means that you have to be more careful when paying power costs, as you might accidentally shrink him. The body version, Master Yi Honed, is a 6 might unit for 7 energy and a power that has ganking and enters ready. This is a great way to sneak in a point, and if you imagine him as a 6 energy cost with Accelerate, maybe he doesn't seem so bad. But either way, I think people only really run him in their decks because they literally have to pick one of the two. And our final holding champion is Teemo, Swift Scout. This card is in the Mind and Chaos domain, and is all about the hidden mechanic. Firstly, he lets you pay 1 energy rather than paying a power cost to hide your cards, which is huge. And second, he lets you pay 1 and exhaust him to put a Teemo from the board or your champion zone into your hand, essentially letting you hide that Teemo over and over again. On a very similar note, we have his signature spell, Guerrilla Warfare. This spell returns up to 2 cards with hidden from your trash to your hand, and lets you hide without paying costs this turn, essentially extending the number of hidden cards your opponent will have to deal with, and giving you access to maybe some of your better cards that you have already used up. The first Teemo we have is Teemo Scout. This is the Chaos version, and it is a 1 might unit for 2 energy. It can be hidden, and gets 3 might the turn that it is played. So you hide him, play him, get the buff, and then use the legend to return him to your hand and repeat. It is surprisingly more annoying than you'd think. The Mind counterpart is Teemo Strategist, a 2 might unit for 2 and a power, which of course can be hidden. And this is another card that got an errata. It now reads, when I defend, choose an enemy unit here and reveal the top 5 cards of your main deck. Deal 1 damage to that unit for each card with hidden revealed this way, then recycle the revealed cards. So essentially, every time the opponent attacks into this Teemo, one of their units will be taking anywhere from 0 to 5 damage. This makes the decision-making a player has to do when going against a Teemo very tricky and hard to plan for. They both don't know how much damage they're going to be taking, and don't know if it's even Teemo that's hidden in that location. Of all the legends though, I think Teemo is probably one of the best examples of a card that will eventually reach a critical mass, meaning eventually there will be enough hidden cards to make this super consistent and extremely powerful. To date, there are only 11 cards with a hidden keyword that you can play around with in these domains, which is really limiting his options overall. But on to our next category of legends, the buff cards. A buff is essentially an effect granted to a unit that gives it 1 might. This effect is permanent until the buff is removed by some other effect, though each unit can only have 1 buff on them at a time, and we have 3 legends which interact with this in some way or another. First up is Lee Sin, Blind Monk. This card is in the body and calm domain and lets you pay 1 energy and exhaust him to buff a friendly unit. The nice part about this card is that 1, it is a simple and consistent source of buffs, and 2, it makes your units stronger. However, the biggest downfall of this legend is that it shares a color combination with Master Yi. Essentially, it is just unlucky enough to be paired up with one of the most popular and effective decks in the game, and so it is inherently compared to him. Lee's signature spell is Dragon's Rage. It costs 4 energy and a power, and reads, move an enemy unit, then choose another enemy unit at its destination. They deal damage equal to their mights to each other. This honestly is not too bad. It is effectively being a cheap way to kill 2 units with 1 card, but it relies on your opponent actually having 2 units, and if you want both to kill each other, they have to have the same might, though it could be used in tandem with other cards to kill things off, or it could just open up a battlefield. Either way, it's very situational, and it needs some support with whatever you want to do with it. Lee's calm champion is Lee Sin Ascetic, a 5 might unit with shield for 5 energy and a power that can be exhausted to buff himself. He also lets you put any number of buffs on him. And I really like this card, but it's bad. It's super slow. It comes in exhausted, so he can't proc himself on the first turn. The second turn, you'll probably want to move him, so you can't proc him then. But on the third turn, you can start to buff him, and until then, he's just kind of a guy. You can combine him with move effects to speed this up a bit, but that's a lot of investment for very little reward. He's essentially the ultimate example of a defend the castle kind of card, but he requires you to put all of your eggs in one basket, and it's a shame, but I just don't think he's all that great. The body version, Lee Sin Centered, is a 6 might unit for 6 energy with Accelerate, who gives other friendly buffed units at his battlefield 2 might. This can be great, but like Garen, I just think it's kind of a win more card. So while the legend is super cool, the actual champion cards are a bit lackluster. And at that point, you're just kind of comparing legends back to back between him and Yi, and that's up to you, but one is a passive ability, and I think that just inherently has more value. Our next buff legend is going to be Sett the Boss, a body and order domain legend that also received an errata. Though this is in line with the Highlander change that we talked about earlier, it's pretty simple. Effectively, if a buffed unit you control would die, you can pay a power and exhaust Sett in order to recall that unit to your base, healed and exhausted. On top of that, when you conquer, you can ready Sett so that you can use this ability again. So, it is effectively Master Yi's Highlander spell, but in the legend zone, and with the condition that it has to be used on a buff unit. This can be super strong, and gives you some real resilience that can be difficult for your opponent to deal with. However, each proc costs a power, which can set you behind quite a bit. Alright, enough jokes, sorry about that. Sett's signature spell is Time Stopper. Sorry, Showstopper. Now, no more jokes. This buffs a friendly unit in your base and then moves it to a battlefield for 1 energy and 1 power. It is a super simple and cheap card, but it sets you up with a buff and gives you a free move, which can be really powerful. For champion units, we have Sett Kingpin in yellow. This is a 5 might unit for 4 energy and a power that has tank, which forces your opponents to target him with combat damage first. He also gets 1 might for each buffed friendly unit at his battlefield. It's kind of similar to the Lee Sin Ascetic card, but works with other units being buffed rather than himself. You're building wide, not building tall, and I think that makes him a quite a bit stronger unit overall. Then we have Sett Brawler, which is the body version. This has 4 might for 5 energy and a power, flipping the might and energy cost of the other set. In exchange for the worst stats, Sett Brawler gets a free buff whenever he is played, or when he conquers. He can also spend his buff to get 4 might for the rest of the turn. This makes him an easy target for all of the buff effects, and a massive unit to deal with on the battlefield. I really like Sett, however, he definitely is a difficult deck to play in terms of managing your runes and your buffs, and sometimes it just kind of implodes on itself if you don't have the resources that you need. Our final buff legend is Leona, Radiant Dawn, a calm and ordered legend who allows you to buff a friendly unit whenever you stun one or more enemy units, and that's Leona's unique feature, stun. Basically, this drops a unit's combat damage to 0 for the turn without lowering their actual might, and so she makes her own units stronger with the buff while making your opponent's units vulnerable and unable to defend themselves. On paper, I really like her, though I haven't had the chance to actually play with her much. Her signature card is Zenith Blade, a 3 energy, 2 power action speed card that can stun an enemy unit at a battlefield and then allows you to move a friendly unit to that enemy's battlefield. I think this could be a super strong card, though it feels a bit expensive for what it does. It's like a souped up version of Sett's Showstopper that ensures that your unit won't take damage from a specific enemy. In the order domain, we have Leona Determined, a 4 might unit with shield for 4 energy and a power that stuns a unit at any battlefield that she attacks, giving you an easy proc for your Legend's ability. As for the calm Leona, Leona Zealot, this version is a 6 might for 6 energy and a power, and if your opponent is within 3 points of winning the game, you can have her enter readied, and she will lower stunned units' actual might by 8 to a minimum of 1. This is definitely a bit more of a win more card, but it also inherently has a catch-up mechanic by entering ready, and I think each of these is super functional overall. Now, our last 2 champions fall into what I call the specialist category. These function differently from just about anything else the game has to offer, or at least they lean into these themes way harder than anything else can. Our first legend here is Viktor, Herald of the Arcane, who is in the Mind and Order domains and is our only token-generating legend. Viktor has the ability to pay 1 energy and exhaust himself to create a 1 might recruit unit token. This allows a constant and steady supply of small units to flood the board, creating an advantage that builds up over time. This is supplemented by Siphon Power, his signature spell, a reaction speed spell that gives friendly units at a battlefield 1 might for the turn, while dropping the opponent's units there by 1 might to a minimum of 1. Not a great card if you are swinging with 1 unit, but in a deck like Viktor's, it can be pretty crazy if you have 5 going at them. Viktor's first champion unit is in the Mind domain. Viktor Innovator is a 3 might unit for 4 energy and a power that lets you create a recruit in your base whenever you play a card during an opponent's turn. That can be a lot of value for doing something you already kinda wanna do. Meanwhile, the Order version is Viktor Leader, a 4 might unit for 4 energy and a power that creates a recruit in base whenever a non-recruit you control dies. For those wondering, Viktor will not trigger if he sees himself die. Now notably, these two kind of want to be built in different styles of decks, with Viktor Innovator benefiting from spell-heavy decks, while Viktor Leader benefits from unit-heavy decks. And I think that's kind of cool. Now, I think this can be a really strong deck, and I know some people like Joey over at 50k Comics loves this deck, but it just doesn't seem to be doing great in larger tournaments in general. However, I think there's a lot of potential there. And our last specialist legend, and our last legend of the video, is basically the exact opposite of Viktor. Rather than making a bunch of small units, Volibear Relentless Storm is all about ramping into playing big bunguses. This legend is in the Fury and Body domain, and allows you to exhaust it when you play a mighty unit in order to channel an exhausted rune. For those wondering, a mighty unit is a unit that has 5 or more might. This can get really out of hand really quickly if it's going well, but it can also do essentially nothing if you aren't hitting your mighty cards. His signature spell, Stormbringer, costs 6 energy and 2 power, and has you choose a friendly unit in your base and then deal damage equal to its might to all enemy units at a battlefield before moving your unit there. So it's a board wipe and a free move, which is solid. However, you do need to have a unit in your base to actually do this, so this can be a dead draw if you're just top decking. And again, that's kind of the theme for Volibear. It sounds stupid, but if it's going well, it's going well. And if it isn't, it really isn't. It's very much like Sett in that way. Volibear's first champion unit is in the Fury domain, fittingly called Volibear Furious. A massive 9 might unit for 10 energy and 2 power with Deflect 2, making it one of the very few possible chosen champions with built-in protection. When this Volibear attacks, he deals 5 damage split among any number of enemy units at that battlefield. Again, kind of a small board wipe on tokens, or a spot removal for a decently sized unit. But that isn't even the biggest Volibear. Over in the Body domain is Volibear Imposing. who has art from one of my favorite Legends of Runeterra cards. Which, by the way, check out the video over on 50k Comics where we compare Riftbound cards with their original Legends of Runeterra cards that they got their art from. Super fun one. Anyways, this Volibear has 10 might, which is tied for the highest in the game right now. This comes in for 12 energy and 2 power, has shield 3 and tank, and when an opponent moves to a battlefield other than the one that he is on, you can draw 1 card. So it's already hard to deal with him unless you have straight up heal spells, but if they choose to avoid it, you still get to draw a card. And in larger games with 3 or more players, this is going to proc even more often. But with that, we have covered all 16 champion legends, their signature spells, and the 32 possible chosen champions that you can pair with them. Of these, it seems like Kai'Sa and Master Yi are the clear strongest, but the decks that interest me the most are definitely Ahri, Sett, and Yasuo, even if they are a bit on the weaker side. Let me know which decks you are the most interested in trying in the comments down below, as well as which champions you want to see brought to the game in future sets. Thank you all so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please remember to leave a like and subscribe for more Riftbound content going forward. For now, I will see you all in the next one though.